Go back to Morning Joe. Beautiful live picture of the United States Capitol at 7:46 in the morning in Washington. Joining us now, member of the Intelligence Committee, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. Senator King, good morning. It's good to have you with us. We want to talk about your view and your criticisms of the Republican proposal for coronavirus relief and how you think we can do better on this. But I want to ask you first, as a member of the Intelligence Committee, for your reaction to the interview just out this morning. Jonathan Swan of Axios, the President of the United States, sitting down. Jonathan Swan asked the president about this intel, about the program from Russia, the GRU, to put out bounties on American soldiers in Afghanistan. Here's what the president said.
It's been widely reported that the US has intelligence indicating that Russia paid bounties or offered to pay bounties to Taliban fighters to kill American soldiers. You had a phone call with Vladimir Putin on July 23rd. Did you bring up this issue?
No, that was a phone call to discuss other things, and frankly, that's an issue that many people said was fake news.
Who said it was
a false news? I think a lot of people. If you look at some of the wonderful folks from the Bush administration, some of them not any friends of mine, were saying that it's a fake issue, but a lot of people said it's a fake issue.
There was
well, we had a call talking about nuclear proliferation, which is a very big subject, where they would like to do something, and so would I. We discussed numerous things. We did not discuss that, no.
And you've never discussed it with him?
I have never discussed it with him, no.
So, Senator King, the president said he has not discussed that issue with President Putin on any of the many phone calls he's had since then. You sit on the Intelligence Committee. Is it your assessment that that intel is, quote, fake news, as the president puts it?
No. How's that for a short answer? I've seen the intelligence. In my opinion, it's not fake news. It's not a hoax. It's serious. And later in that interview, which I heard earlier on your program, the president said something about that. Well, I didn't know about it, or I didn't see it, or it didn't come to my desk. Well, it was on the front page of the New York Times within a few days, and there was nothing keeping the president from, I'm quite sure he knew about that story, and still didn't raise it with President Putin. I find it just absolutely astonishing. And it's... The president still hasn't even the interview you just mentioned. I think is the first time he's actually responded to the story, and basically he sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, well, I didn't see it, no big deal. Putin and I are talking about other things. I don't know what could be more important than the Russians providing incentives to take the lives of Americans.
And as you know, Senator, it wasn't just the New York Times. It appeared in the president's daily brief. That's how important intel officials thought it was. You say the intelligence is solid based on what you've seen. How do you explain, then, the president reflexively taking the side of Putin, taking the side of the dissenters on this intelligence?
I don't have any explanation, except it's part of a pattern that is no surprise to anybody, that the president has been very reluctant to cross President Putin, going back to Helsinki and before. There's no real explanation for it. And, you know, what? Here's what bothers me, and I get into this dilemma where the president makes some kind of statement like that, and I know better, but I can't talk about it. And I'm not going to talk about the specific intelligence. I'm only going to say that, in my opinion, it's not fake news. But if the president says it never got to my desk, then he could prove that by showing that the daily briefs that he got for late February, when this was current, didn't mention it. I don't think he's going to do that.
So, Senator, is anything being done to push back on this, as far as you're aware? We know the president isn't pushing back on it, but as you say, there's solid intelligence that Russia is paying Taliban-linked militants to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan. Is there any pushback on that?
Well, first, you just made a very assertive statement that I didn't. I'm not necessarily agreeing with every phrase that you just said. But the answer to your question is foreign policy is largely in the hands of the president. Now, we could have hearings on this and try to bring the facts out, but that gets into the difficult situation of not betraying sources and methods of how we learn things. So it's very difficult to have a public hearing on a matter of this nature. But the president has said what he said. You saw it in the interview, and basically, and then when he started, when General Nicholson talked about, this is nothing new for the Russians, he sort of blew that off and denigrated a decorated American general. So I don't know where you go with this.
Claire McCaskill, I'll take that question to you, and then you can take it to the senator. But what indication do we have from what we have seen from President Trump that he's not, to take it a step further, almost coordinating with Russia in some way? Because nothing explains this. And I wonder if we should be looking at this with a much more critical eye.
I can assure you there are many people in Washington, D.C., both currently involved in foreign policy and intelligence and formerly involved, that see Trump as a form of a Russian operative in the United States. There has been a consistent pattern with this president, and is beyond troubling. Angus, good morning. I've got a question for you about the coronavirus aid bill. It seems to me, looking at it from the outside at this moment, that Mitch McConnell has a crisis that is fairly rare for him, and that is he doesn't have a unified caucus on this. There is a real dissension among Republicans as to how to move forward. And it's my understanding he didn't even show up yesterday for the negotiation on the bill. It's beginning to feel, looking at it, that there may not be a bill. What does it feel like there? Is this, in fact, Mitch McConnell finally having the wheels come off in terms of keeping his troops all gathered together?
Well, I think there'll be a bill because the American people are going to demand it. And as someone pointed out last night, I can't imagine being one of those endangered Republican senators going home and saying, well, we just didn't do anything, when people are losing their extended unemployment benefits, SNAP benefits are not being increased, evictions are going to start again in a big way. This crisis isn't over. And two preliminary points, Claire. One is we shouldn't even be having this discussion. We should be moving out of the pandemic now instead of back into the teeth of it. It was the failure of this administration to have A, a plan, and B, to not build the infrastructure, particularly for testing and tracing, that could have allowed us to handle this as it's been handled in every place else in the world. I saw a graph the other day in the EU, which is about the same size as the U.S., democracy, industrialized countries. They're having 5,000 or 6,000 cases a day. We're having 60,000. We have 4% of the world's population. We've had 23% of the deaths. There's no other explanation for that other than our government has completely failed us on that. The second point is, we ought to be having this discussion about the next round of relief, because we need it, a month ago, or at least 2 or 3 weeks ago. And to wait until now, when the deadline is this Friday for the expiration of these benefits, I don't get it. I mean, everybody knows what the issues are. Mitch McConnell was talking about liability, a month and 6 weeks ago. Why they waited this long, and now, as you say, they don't have a unified caucus. But I think there will be a bill. I think you'll find a combination of Republicans that feel that they have to do something and Democrats who feel they have to do something. I think there's going to be enough in the Senate to put together a bill, along with, they're going to have to negotiate with the White House. But this is like, you see the train coming, and you're just still playing tiddlywinks on the tracks. I mean, they knew that these deadlines were coming, these cliffs were coming on unemployment insurance, and didn't even open negotiations, didn't respond to letters, calls, or anything else. It's the antithesis of responsible government.
Eddie Glaude, jump in.
Senator Angus, I really appreciate your comments about this whole process, but I want to pan out just for a little bit. As you say, we know that the American people are suffering, and we know that the circumstances around rent, the circumstances around employment insurance, all of this is coming to a head, and it's coming to a head immediately. As you see this process, as you're participating in this process, what would you describe as the values animating the Republican side? What is being revealed about what they care most about that the American people should know in this moment?
Well, I think you can start with what they don't seem to be too worried about, which is all those people who are losing unemployment insurance. In Maine, it's 72,000 people. They wanted to cut from 600 to 400 to 200. That's $400 a week. I did the math. It's almost $30 million a week out of the pockets of those people who desperately need it. I've been talking to them. But it's also $30 million a week out of the Maine economy. So this is bad both for the recipients, but also for the economy. There's a newfound deficit hawkness in the Republican caucus. People who are suddenly saying, "How can we spend all that money?" I was walking by a Republican senator yesterday, getting on the elevator, and he was saying that we can't spend all this money we don't have. And I shouted, I said, "So why did you vote for the tax bill?" Well, I didn't get any answer to that. That was totally unfunded and added significantly over $1 trillion to the deficit. But they don't want to spend money to help people make the rent. Maybe it's because they just don't know anybody who can't pay their rent. Maybe it's because of the circles they travel in. I don't know what it is, but this is not the time. I hate the deficit, and I think we ought to be chipping away at it. But we should have been doing it in good times. A time like this is not the time for taking that concern and having it override the needs of real people. The economic result of not doing something will be worse for the deficit in the long run than if we do something. I mean, we learned that at the beginning of the Great Depression, and we just can't have this this drama about the deficit when this is a national hurricane, if you will, that's destroying the country, and we've got to respond to it and realize that there are people that just through no fault of their own are absolutely hurting for food, for rent, for medicine, for just ordinary able to live and to be dubbing around the way we have been for the last couple of weeks without any action on this from Senator McConnell is, as I can't remember my phrase, but I think I said it's not responsible governing.
Senator Angus King, thank you very much for being on this morning.